Good afternoon. I'm Priscilla Almquist-Olson, your host, and today I welcome the chairman and the vice chairman of the recently organized committee called PACE. What does PACE stand for? Promoting a Sustainable Easton. So welcome Tom Broussard, chair, and Nancy Donahue, vice chair. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Priscilla.
Thank you. Want me to start?
Please do.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Priscilla, and thank you for having us on the show this evening and being able to talk about our committee. PACE was formed during the last town meeting in the spring 2024, and voters voted as a result of looking at the budget and challenges with balancing the budget to form a committee where sustainability really refers to our ongoing economic issues and not sustainability in the environmental sense. PACE is a committee that's made up of 19 individuals across all of the town departments, town government, including our town administrator, and the school department, including our superintendent, Dr. Cabral. So we have constituents who are working in these departments, as well as at-large members, residents who interviewed to be on the committee, and that's where Tom and I joined this committee. I'm a 29-year resident of Easton. I just retired from a 20-year career in the schools. I've been involved in the library board for over 10 years, and it's a privilege to be able to serve on this committee to really look at the questions that the charge had of the committee. And those three questions are, how do we fix our revenue shortfall? How are we spending our money in Easton? What are our expenses? And how does our budget impact our services? And when you really think about a budget as a reflection of the town's values, these services that we have are the things that Easton deems important. Our next open house that we have, we would invite residents to please attend. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the first one that we had, which was on January 8th. And that open house at ECAT House was an opportunity to get some residents engaged in this process. And we asked folks three questions. We asked them, what do you love about Easton? What do you think are some challenges that we face in Easton? And then what would you tell someone who's moving to Easton? And we got such enormous feedback. I think the engagement in that night was really great for the whole committee.
Absolutely.
And maybe, Tom, can you expound on that?
Yeah, so normally when you hold these sessions, we are fortunate to have them at the ECAT House, candidly, just a gem of a local landmark. And we had more people than we thought we would possibly ever get. I think close to 75 people were there in total. We had the police chief, fire chief, we had the town administrator, school superintendent. We had a lot of people that were there to answer questions from the residents of our community. And it was just a fabulous setup of people mingling with town leadership and residents sharing what they thought of our community.
And so some of the feedback that we received, not surprising, about our town are that folks love the green space, they love the conservation space, they love our field space, and among many other things. And then some of the challenges that came out were around new development and the difficulty to get permitting. And Tom made the point that some of these things, while they're all our values and not one is right or one is wrong, but they are a bit odds with each other. And I think that's indicative of some of the things that we're facing now. Namely, no one wants to hear about a tax increase, yet no one wants to hear about positions and services that are cut either. So we really have to, be very thoughtful and mindful about what options we put in front of the voters. I also wanted to talk a little bit about just sort of the overall summary, and then Tom will get into some of the detail. When we have been working in this committee, we have spent, I think, over 35 hours now studying the revenue in the town, the expenses, and all of these details, including state aid. And we were initially asked to come to an estimate of what we think the size of the problem is, namely this budget shortfall. And sort of an average consensus of everyone on the committee was about $4.7 million. Well, interestingly enough, as we're starting to put some proposed figures to that, we're now talking about $6.4 million. So correct. A little bit even understated of what the size of the problem is. There are three pathways to a solution, of course. We could have just an expense type of reduction, but we're probably talking about upwards of 50 positions throughout the town and the services that go with them. I don't think anybody wants to see that solution. A revenue solution, which means more taxes, of course, an operational override. And Tom will talk more about the detail of that and what our taxes look like now. And then, of course, the other option, the third option, would be a hybrid solution that would include some of both of those things. And that's the point that the committee is at right now. Our next few meetings will be really about carving out how much of that is expense, how much is going to be revenue, and what that might look like. And that's where we'd really like voters and residents to engage with us on that. The immediacy of the problem and the size of the problem is really going to inform which of those solutions we have to look at. So I'll let Tom talk about some of the details.
I appreciate that. And I think it's real important, Priscilla. Nancy and I have been very clear to tell the residents of our community that the challenges we face are not unique to us, that there are other cities and towns across Massachusetts, many of them, who are either facing the challenges now or faced them last year. And candidly, I think we all saw the challenges last year, whether it was many positions being reduced or override discussions. So we're not in a situation that we created. As a matter of fact, we are here because of the values that Easton embraces. We are a residential forward community. We believe in our housing and open space. But I'm not sure everybody in the audience knows that 1/3 of our entire land mass is non-taxable.
38%, yeah, actually.
Well, so we
It's
just
in conservation.
we just recently did it, and we came up at 33, including Stonehill. But we're happy to check, and 38 would even make our point more. But the reality is, I think Nancy pointed out that a couple things are at odds. We love our open space. We love our recreation. We have always embraced it. And that comes with it a hidden cost of not generating taxation. And so on the one hand, we love it. And on the other hand, we know it comes with a cost that we have to value. From a revenue perspective, our largest taxable base is residential taxes, not surprising. And I think most people know that the state mandates how much we can increase our tax base on property taxes. And that's 2.5%. And some people might hear the lingo, Prop 2.5. And what that means is our largest revenue base, 72% of our revenue, can only go up by 2.5%. Yet items like on our expense side, and even us as just living our lives of inflation, whether it's at the grocery store or at the gas pump when we see it, those expenses go up far more than 2.5%. And so communities have been struggling with this ever since Prop 2.5 was put forth.
I think one of the most indicative are those health insurance numbers.
Agreed.
10% increase last year, 12% proposed this year. And so all of the health care that is paid for as part of that large group plan, which was a huge savings to the town years ago when that was put in place, has now just become a budget buster, really. And again, not only in Easton, it's
Agreed.
It's a very, very difficult situation.
And we hear a lot of feedback from the residents, and that's why we're so happy to be here in terms of its opportunity to educate. They say, why don't we go get new growth? And we've been working hard as a community. We, as residents, have been working hard supporting it because we vote every year on our budget. We are the ones who own that. And we have voted to create sewer districts that have enabled us to have new growth opportunities that wouldn't be present, as an example. And last year was our largest new growth year ever. We set a record. The challenge is it's just $1.5 million. And in context, we're rolling off close to $2 million of federal funding that was COVID related called ARPA and ESSER funds. And so, yes, COVID brought that extra revenue to us. We used it to hire professionals to help our kids, especially in schools as a good example, come back into the school system. Those needs are still there. Those kids are still challenged. So while the funding that COVID provided us is going away, the services that it was supporting are still needed. So it's not as if we as a community or we as leaders of our community or our town, whether it's the school side or the town side, have not been working hard. They've been working incredibly hard.
In fact, we have found in this 35 hours of research and comparison to the communities around us, communities that are identified as DART, which is what the Department of Ed calls our comparative communities, that we actually run very lean on both the town government side and the school sides.
What about the proposition that special ed children can be shipped in and pay full tuition?
Yeah, that's a great, Nancy, I'll let you take the lead, but that is a great topic to bring up because it can also represent very large expenses, but it could be a revenue driver.
Yes, and also we have a committee on economic development.
We do.
And I don't know whether you've investigated that committee. I don't know what the status is, but we do have some new businesses like the Volkswagen plant on
We do.
138. But I think what most of us residents would love to see is many more businesses which can pay the higher residential commercial tax rate.
Yep, they do, and that just shifts some of the burden off the residents to the commercial base.
Exactly.
But your levy is still constrained by your base, by your taxation base. But new growth is great. What we need to appreciate is that although we say new growth is always welcomed and appreciated, there isn't too many places a Gillette Stadium would be built in Easton, and that's the type of development you would need to fundamentally change the revenue growth because we are a residential forward community. There's no shaking that. It's not that we don't want to see more businesses come in, but the amount of business growth that would be required to offset the challenge isn't available. It's just not realistic for us to expect that.
And certainly would not even be possible to substantially grow in the short term. You know, we're talking about something that's years out, and part of all of these committees and plans that are being put forth in Vision Easton. I'll be speaking to that committee as well. I think there's an enormous effort for these groups to work together and plan together. So definitely something in the future. And when you mentioned the education thing, there have been additional programs put in place in the schools in the last couple of years so that more students of our residents can be educated in district, which is of course preferable for those children, preferable for us from a cost perspective. And the idea is at some point too, as you're suggesting, grow those programs enough so that students can come in. But at this point, we have been filling those with our own residents. So hopefully we're at a juncture someday where we can do that, but we just haven't been able to do that yet.
Yep. But credit to the schools for working hard. Most people don't realize that the expense of a special education student, if they did have to have out of district placement, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And so credit to the school for really doing a great job. But Nancy, you brought up something that I think on the expense side is really important to help people understand. People might say, you know, geez, are we just spending too much? So maybe we don't make a lot of revenue, but maybe we're spending too much. And to Nancy's point, we did a tremendous amount of research, Priscilla, comparing ourselves against all groups of communities, whether it was surrounding us, of equal size, equal residential commercial split, equal population size, DART communities, which is a term that the Department of Education here in the state compares communities that are like us. And every time you did a cut, it came back that Easton does more than less. If there is a tagline on the expense side, I can absolutely assure you unequivocally, looking anybody in the eye, we do more with less. And let me just give you a couple statistics if I could. On the town spend, we spend about $4,166 per resident. That's $405 or 9% less than the state average. If we spent the state average, that would be an additional $10 million. $10 million. So we are saying we may have a $5 to $6 million challenge. If we just spent to the state average on the town side, it would be $10 million more spend. And on the school side, it's actually even more impressive. We spend $16,635 per pupil on average. That's $3,498 or 17% less than the state average. And if we spent to the state average, that would be $12 million more. Combined, that would be $22 million more of expense. Now, want to be very clear, two things. One, we are okay that we are efficient and we spend less. That's okay. However, you have to be thoughtful that at some point you may really and materially impact programs and services. The other thing I want to point out, some folks say, well, that's okay, that's state average. But how are we doing with our comparable communities? In the government or the town spend, It's the lowest spend of our 8 comparable communities and the second lowest spend amongst all surrounding communities. And on the school spend side, it's the second lowest spend amongst all our surrounding communities. So really what we're realizing is that we have for years done more with less, and we give credit to the schools and the town for doing that. So it's appreciated. So this isn't something we did wrong, and that's where we want to make sure the residents hear again. We're not here because we've made mistakes. We're here because we just have fundamental challenges of how revenue gets made, being a residential first community with a lot of preserved land and running very efficiently.
I think it's apparent that there are so many folks in Easton who aren't aware of this situation, and I would give credit to the town government and management and school management that this problem hasn't come to a head before this. And when we had that open house at Queeset House, there were so many folks who really were listening carefully, and you could see sort of learning for the first time the scope and scale and background to this issue. So
Agreed.
that was a very worthwhile evening.
Other couple interesting stats of our expense structure, 82 to 85% of our expense is people. Our town leaders and school leaders have already done an incredible job at minimizing the expenses anywhere else. So they have really cut to the bone, and it's really human assets that we're talking about. The next level of expenses are things like utilities and R&M, things that repairs and maintenance that can't go away. We have to keep the lights on. So that's why we have a sense of urgency. That's why we're trying to engage the community at this point in time. Last point, you might say then maybe we have too many people. We did compare staffing levels across all of the comparable towns, and we absolutely staff with less. We continue every time we turn over a rock to find we do more with less, which is a great thing. We don't want that to change. The last thing, and we talked about it a little bit, is that we are fundamentally experiencing utility, healthcare costs, transportation costs, and repairs and maintenance costs that are accelerating far faster than 2.5%. And that's what's creating this tension right now. I do want to point out that there is an impact, a real world impact to people regardless of what we choose. If it's an expense reduction, we know that it will represent, more likely than not, positions in our town that will go away and the programs and services associated with it. On the flip side, if it's a revenue solution, we know that it will impact the residents of our community and the tax bill they receive. And that's real too. And I think it's important to highlight that Easton actually has the second highest tax bill, dollar-wise, out of all of the communities around us, which is again part of that tension. We pay on average $8,634 for an average single family home. Couple key things to keep in mind. We also have the second highest home value of all of the towns around us, $647,000 average home value. And that just shows people outside of our community love Easton. They want to move in. It is a desirable community. We have done things right to attract people, and their home values that live here have gone up. The single asset, largest asset for most people is their home. And we have, I think, as town leadership, I say we, not that I was in town leadership, but that we in our town have shown that Easton is a place to come and live. So it's a good thing. If you look at our single family tax bill as a percent of our home value, right in the middle of the pack. And the other good news is we in Easton make the second highest amount of money per person out of all of our towns. So we do well, which is good. And as a result, our average tax bill as a percent of our income is the second lowest. So third lowest, I apologize, the third lowest out of all 11 surrounding towns. So when people say, I do pay a meaningful tax bill, they do. We want to acknowledge that. That's important. So,
And we do recognize that any increase to that could be really an enormous burden to people who are on a fixed income. And so we recognize that. We're very sensitive to that. And that would be part of the discussion as well, is there.
And there is a bill, I believe, that Senator Timilty, when he was representing Easton, put in that for senior citizens who met a certain income qualification, that they would not have to pay the increased tax assessment due to the new elementary school, the Blanche Ames Elementary School, nor the
addition of the police and the fire and the DPW buildings. So I don't know where that stands. Do you have any information on that?
I don't have a status on that, candidly. I haven't heard that that has been promulgated. I can tell you that the town of Easton is uniquely sensitive, though, to seniors and to those with low income, fixed income, and veterans. And I would encourage anybody who is challenged from a financial standpoint to reach out to the town or the Veterans Office. We actually have contributed monies to a fund to help defray taxes for those at-risk populations. And I would highly recommend that those people reach out to the town.
Yes, and also to the Council on Aging.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because,
Well
and the
said.
Veterans Officer is located at the Frothingham Hall.
Well said.
Also, but it's the Council on Aging that has all the information. So there are, besides taxes, there are other groups like self-help and other for fuel assistance and so forth. And
Well said.
Good
Yeah.
point. Good point.
And Priscilla, you know what you haven't heard us speak of today, just in closing? We haven't given you an answer, and we haven't given the residents an answer. That's because we don't have one yet. And we're here to ask for your engagement, yours, residents, to come out to our meetings, come to our next open house, which is February 26th.
February 26th.
Slated.
So, location still to be determined.
Yep,
So
location to be
it
determined.
will not be at Queeset House because we filled that one so quickly for the first one, but we'll find a larger venue.
Well said.
And our regular meetings that we have roughly every 2 weeks, they can be joined in person at Town Hall or remotely. So we have one coming up next Wednesday, next week.
Correct.
That number of the week is escaping me right now. But, you know, we also have a place on the town website with all of the documents we've reviewed. Fact check us, you know, please make sure that you're looking at these documents, asking questions, engaging with a committee member. We have a email address. There's
do.
so many ways to be in touch with the committee and engage, but looking at those things on that part of the town website, I think is very, very helpful.
Agreed.
And so when they go to the town website, what should they be looking for?
So you want to head out to, I think it's, you can put in Pase in the search bar. So easton.ma.us/PASE, P-A-S-E. And they'll see lots of information. They'll see a little bit about what is Pase, why is Pase doing this work, and they'll see access to loads of data sets, comparisons, presentations that we've given. So much information, and really call to action. Now is the time. We will be working on our recommendation over the next month. So if you would like us to consider some expense considerations, now is the time. Revenue considerations, now is the time, because we will be working over the next month and a half to finalize our recommendation, as is our charge, and presenting to the select board so that everybody can be ready for the May 2025 town meeting.
Well, thank you so much for this presentation. Thorough, detailed, informative, and really engaging. There's so much information.
So much.
But most importantly, thank you so much for all the dedication and time that you've spent providing this service to the town. So we thank you so much for that.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for having us. Pleasure to serve Easton.
And thank you to our team, honestly.
Oh,
While we're
yes.
here, it's just representative of the effort they're putting in, and so
Okay.
many people. Thank you, Priscilla.
So thank you for joining us. This is Priscilla Almquist-Olson bidding you farewell. Until next time, be well.